Now, plants grown as nature designs, who obtain all their NPK through humus under this direction of the sun, may grow smaller than a lettuce or a cabbage. Then plants pushed very hard with NPK through the uptake of water, taking in much more than nature would design for them to take in. They grow bigger, but actually there is less flavor. If you cut open a conventional tomato, you have big white ribbons, you have little pockets of red water. If you cut open a naturally produced tomato, not taking in more NPK than through humus, you cut it open, it may be a little smaller, but there is very little white ribbon and there is big red flesh, and the flavor is rich and is sweet and is not bitter. The bitterness in oranges or in tomatoes and in other things is the surplus of nitrogen turned into nitrite, and it is actually dangerous to your health. But now with all foods, say with oranges, naturally grown, it has no bitterness, it has beautiful flavor, a lot of juice and very little of the skin that you have to eat with conventional ones. And so it goes with all. Once upon a time, when I was a child, all oranges were natural. There was no artificial orange yet, no bitterness that has gradually come in. Or say with your maize growing, the maize is not green and an active green, it is blue-black, has leaves that are much too big. The same with spinach and many other plants. Now, if we have here an artificially grown cabbage or plant, and here a slightly smaller, naturally grown one, for photosynthesis there has to be transpiration of water. And if a plant cell contains too much salt, by having had to take excess amount from the water of NPK, nitrogenous salts, other salts, for the plant not to die because the salt is so much in the cell, the plant has to take in extra water to balance the salt, and in consequence is so big. And also, if you check on the transpiration rate of the one plant or the other, the big plant full of water and salt transpires much less than the smaller plant, which is naturally grown. And about no more than 3% of what we see and eat as a plant comes from the soil. The bulk comes from photosynthesis. And that is a cosmic energy from the sun and non-earthly carbon dioxide. And so the fine flavors of a plant come through photosynthesis, and that is grossly interfered with. A conventional nutritionist who, like agricultural conventional scientists, works in an atomistic system of little parts. He will decide how much of this element or that element or vitamin you are to have in a particle approach. Who does not understand how a plant should be grown, has absolutely no idea of what he prescribes. And the tests of conventional science, based on a particle approach, like they all are, can't actually show, technically, can't show whether there is a difference between a natural vitamin C and an artificial vitamin C. It can't do it. The methodicity can't. We have tests for quality that are based on a total approach and not a particle approach, in which we can show in a very short time the vast difference between a living vitamin C and a dead one, which does not do the same. But as a philosopher, I examine chemistry and I ask, with 50 plants, is the phosphate the same in these plants, or is there a variation? I come to the limit of the dictum of chemistry. Chemistry can say it is phosphate or it is not phosphate, and it is so much phosphate, but it can't distinguish between the differences. And then the advice of conventional agronomists who want to give you extra nitrogen in your green manure is to grow maybe Russian comfrey and lucerne. Two plants cows don't like to eat. If one gives them the choice of different legumes, and lucerne is the last they eat under an objective test. But very one-sided nitrogen will go into the green manure, and much more is needed. It's a wrong advice. If you take stop, go on. I'm sorry, I'm tired. If you take 50 plants...
Already, you have...
I know. In the instinct of old peasants, and maybe still of some alive now, they know each plant gives something else. And they like to use more plants in green manure than only two. It had become the custom in Italy to only use one. When I first got to Latina, to Agri Latina, they were going to use only one, and that's mustard. You should use, I told them at the time, use at least, if you can only get 20 different seeds, then plant 25, in other words, as much as possible. They have a selection, according to price, of 90 seeds, different varieties, and they use about 30 per green manure. And I will come back to that. Now, if you put up the instruments of a symphony orchestra of 50 players, you have the instruments, and you ask them one by one to play C sharp, which you can control with physics, whether it's exactly correct. Think of the variation from a trombone to a flute to a violin to a bass. Culturally, totally different sounds, all the same C sharp. That is how it is with plants. You want a great variety of green manure plants to have a really beneficial effect. Now, if you also have our biodynamic basic spray 500, say you grow a green manure crop, I have a DVD on Cosmo, earthly ecology, and green manure. That's what we are really discussing at the moment. It ends with Agri Latina, and they have sometimes a green manure that is even 2 meters tall, but there it's only a summer green manure this high. You have to mulch it into little pieces, and you go through it with a plow that we have designed. I started with it 60 years ago, that I will show this afternoon in the actual practical session. And that is worked into the ground with that variety, and you enrich them. They in 10 years have a tremendous production and buy nothing. On a 2,000 hectare Australian wheat and sheep farm in a rainfall area of 20 to 25 centimeters, the conventional farmer, to get his crop into the ground, has to spend 300,000 Australian dollars. That is about 70% of that in euros. So a bit more than 200,000 euros just to sow the crop with pre-emerging sprays, all chemicals and fertilizer. Our farms pay $2.40, that's less than €2 per hectare in biodynamic preparation. That is all. After 18 months drought, we have just had 12 years drought, like in the Bible. After 18 months drought only, this was the conventional farm next door. You see, when the first rain comes, it's erosion. Now you go on the other one. It's the biodynamic one. No erosion. The soil is structured. We have had in Queensland, in the tropics, where we have a big dairy making cheese, supplying milk to Cairns and Townsville, biodynamic milk. We have a farm where in 15 months there was 10 meters of rain. It caused no erosion on our farm, the other farms were flowing away. Now at Agri Latina, when I first was asked to go there, it was June, they had finished production. In Agri Latina, it was June, they had finished production. They were registered organic. The sandy loam was yellow-orange, very low in humus. They were going to plant mustard as green manure, 30-hectare glasshouse, and I said, use 20 different plants as seeds for green manure, apply 10 centimeter deep water, and don't use a tractor, but with a knapsack, spray, walking, 500. Remember the picture after 1 year? If you put a tractor on, immediately it will be pressed down, compacted like that. And when the plants with 10 centimeters are this high, give another 10 centimeters of water, no more, and they will be this high, and then water 1 meter deep and no more water. The roots follow the water down. After 6 weeks, 1 meter of white hair roots, the white feeder roots, right throughout the soil, and the soil already noticeably more chocolate color. In 6 weeks, after 8 months, they were pressurized to have a field day to show the result. I had never thought of exactly that technique before. For each farm it is different. I train the farmers in biodynamics, but to be independent from me, so each is using his farm as his individual. I am not there all the time, all over Earth, to know exactly the climatic conditions and all. They know how to judge. They can ring me if they have a problem, but they are independent men. Now we can do things with sand that is like the Sahara, I've mentioned before. We can do similarly with good soils that have been compacted therapy. We could solve the problems of Latina rocks, or what is the problem at the Po Valley in 3 years. I never make a promise. When I'm asked how long from a new farmer, how long will it take until my farm is as good as that one, I say, if the knowledgeable BD farmer was taking this on, he will get more result in 1 year than you will get in 3. I never give a promise, but I could, if I was there, change those rocky, compacted soils in 3 years to normal soils where you can go through with the implements that I will show this afternoon. And I think this will have to be enough for this morning. We started very late. A lot more could be said, but I have said enough to give an introduction. I would like to emphasize once more, the professional of agriculture is the farmer. And in Australia, with the farmers, I have built a totally new methodology of practical farming, suitable to receiving well-made biodynamic preparations, effective biodynamic preparations. And to effective biodynamic preparations, I have to add Aaron Fried Pfeiffer was 19 in 1919 when he appeared in Dorna and met Steiner. And Steiner recognized in this young man that he could, in future, properly trained, be in charge of making the preparations, the biodynamic preparations, as they should be made, and including storage and application and all. They worked on that for 7 years, and until Steiner's death, and Pfeiffer was not quite finished. There was, as is typical for sects, jealousy that Pfeiffer had lived like a son in the house of Steiner, and he left. He couldn't stand the atmosphere. He went to Holland, England, and then stayed in the United States. He then finished how the preparation should be made, etc. We have always used that method, and we exchanged preparations with Pfeiffer in 1958, and he said some of ours were better than his. How did we make them? And we told him, and he wanted to come and visit, but he got too sick in Honolulu and had to go home, and he died then. Now, early on, they took no notice of Pfeiffer and Steiner's work. Lily Kolisko also left for England. She knew, and she was a friend of mine, and perhaps the greatest of these pupils of Steiner's. And so 3 people in Germany started making preparations, Vögele, Bartsch and Stegemann. My friend Ernesto Giannoni, who at his request I buried, a very close friend, who was highly esteemed by Steiner and was present in the last works of Steiner. He worked for 1 year at Stegemann's to learn about biodynamics, and Stegemann never appeared other than in a black suit and tie. Well, that's not a farmer. He never worked. He doesn't know. And I have a photo of those early ones, and there's not one who looks like a farmer. They're soft city people. And Steiner was not a farmer, and farmers take notice of a farmer. They don't take notice necessarily, certainly not in Australia, of theoretical stuff. And in the agricultural course, there are some quite impossible things, but it is basically cosmic chemistry. It is not an agricultural method. An agricultural method would have to teach farmers how to practically farm. Agri is soil, culture is culture. There is nothing about that in the agricultural course, other than energetic stirring, a bubbling chaos in the stirring, and the way the Germans do that, and it has just been republished. I can show technically it is impossible. I've done that in one of my books. Technically it is impossible. There is no energetic stir, and there is no chaos at all. You can't make it with that thing. So they have misled Europe, because German dominance is available. Well, you understand it. You can say it after. Yeah. Okay. And conventional agricultural science, as produced in universities, also is not an agricultural method. It does give no advice to farmers how to proceed in the actual farming work. The Biodynamic Agricultural Association of Australia, which is our most important organisation, is limited in membership to professional farmers. We have a second organisation which I gave lectures to a group in Melbourne of 1,200, one of 900, one of 700 in 1975, for home gardeners, hobby farmers and people in the clouds. When I at the end had them all in one room, I said only those should become members of this organization, which is not professional, who actually grow some vegetables or some fruit for their children themselves, even if it is on a balcony. And then of those 1,200, 900 and 700, 84 were actually doing anything practical. Yeah. And that was started at school. But the Farming Association is only for professionals. The farmers would not come to meetings if there's much talk of city-type people. So I emphasize that. I could not see how a biodynamic association can work with a big mixture of people. It is just not a professional organization. And with the Italian official PD association, I'm very, very glad that a good farmer is the president. It should be a farmer and not somebody else who is in the clouds. Yeah. So, and that is here Franco Petrini. And so I emphasize that for the farmers, they should run their own show, not other people. Okay, thank you very much.